So we have discussed at great length the various events of the French Revolution. It was in 1789 that the revolution broke out with the storming of the Bastille, and subsequently many governments came to power. It began with the National Assembly, which was followed by the National Constituent Assembly, which gave France the first constitution in the year 1791. This was then followed by many other governments, and between 1793 and 1794 it was the National Convention headed by the Jacobin leader Maximilien Robespierre that created the Reign of Terror in France. Following the fall of the Jacobin government, the Directory came to power in the year 1795. After failing to restore political and economic stability in France, the Directory also paved the way for Napoleon Bonaparte to assume power as the Emperor of France in the year 1804. So this was a chain of events that together comprised the French Revolution. Now all this while we have been talking about how it were only the men who went out to fight the battles, who went out to wage the war as the revolutionaries. Now do you think this was the only part of the French Revolution that fought this revolution in the truest sense of the term? Where were the women? Were they given any space in the revolution? Did they have their own say? Did they have their own involvement in this revolution? Well, this lesson will be devoted to understanding the French Revolution from a new perspective. That is to say, we will now learn about women in the French Revolution. Now, women had been a part of the French Revolution ever since, even though they did not get a proper recognition in the French society as proper revolutionaries. Now, during the old regime, as in when the estate system was in place, when the absolute monarchy was in place, women of the third estate had to work and toil a lot. Now this was a time when France was embroiled in several wars and the men were fighting in the wars, and so women had to work as seamstresses, laundresses, flour, fruit and vegetable sellers, and even as servants to earn a living. So they had to really work very hard in order to earn a living, and along with earning a living they also had to take care of their families. They also had to fetch water, cook food, take care of the children. So it was a lot of responsibility that rested on the shoulders of these women. And their condition did not improve for anything better following the storming of the Bastille, because during this period political crisis was at peak in the French society. Many French revolutionary wars were taking place, which is why the men were out fighting the wars in the battlefields, and it were the women who were living in the houses and struggling a lot in order to earn a living and taking care of the family. And so women have been a part of the revolution even though they were not officially a part of the same. Now women believed that with their involvement in the revolution they would be able to pressurize the revolutionary government in order to take care of or acknowledge their demands. Now they had a lot of demands. Firstly, no government gave them political and electoral rights. The French Constitution of 1791 was the first ever constitution that France has ever had. And despite being so, it did not have any mention of women. Women were treated as passive citizens. At the same time, the historic document that was the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen also gave no space to women. So from this we can understand how women during the old regime as well as in revolutionary France were given a subordinate position to restrict themselves into. Now, lack of access to education hindered women of the third estate to voice their opinions, because it is only when you have the knowledge, the awareness of your position of the society that you would be able to voice your demands. Now, if I don't know anything, how will I be able to understand that I am being exploited or oppressed? In order to know so, I should be enlightened to a certain extent. And unfortunately enough, these people of the third estate, as in these women of the third estate, were deprived of the access to education. They were already poor. They could not afford to go to schools and attend education. And at the same time, it wasn't really in practice for the members of the third estate to go to schools and attend education and voice their own opinions. In fact, only some women of affluent families in the third estate attend convent education. But this was of no great avail. This is because even after attaining convent education to a certain extent, these women were married soon after. And even if they were not willing to get married, they did not really have the option to choose to not get married. So access to education isn't something that women of the third estate got to enjoy during the old regime. Now, when men's clubs were coming to the fore, as in these were the places where men met to discuss politics as well as the individual courses of action, women's clubs also came up in different French cities. Because in men's clubs, men did not acknowledge the rights and the demands and the requirements of the women. Because they did not really give women the space to voice their opinion. So the women had to form their own clubs where they met to discuss the issues of inequality and discriminations that they faced regularly. Firstly, women were restricted to a subordinate position in the society. They were not given to enjoy any power or authority in the public space. At the same time, the women who used to work were also paid much lesser than the men who did the same work. So, inequality in the wages they earned also existed. And these women's clubs became the hubs or the sites where women now started discussing all these issues of inequality and discriminations that they were subject to. Now, among the many women's clubs that came to the fore and became important in different French cities, mention must be made of the Society of Revolutionary and Republican Women. It was one of the most popular and significant women's club. Now, this women's club drew significant interest to itself and it advocated for gender equality. Here you can see how women used to meet in these clubs and they used to raise their demands. They used to advocate for gender equality because they wanted to be treated at par on the same ground with men. Now, the revolutionary governments, when they came to power in revolutionary France, did certain things which really helped women to make their positions somewhat better. Firstly, the revolutionary governments made schooling compulsory for all girls. So earlier on, it were only the members of the affluent families who could afford convent education, but the revolutionary government made schooling compulsory for all girls. And at the same time, it also introduced many laws that forbid men from compelling their daughters to get married against their will. Now, this was a really empowering move in the sense that earlier on women were compelled to get married even if they did not want to do so. But now these laws were to forbid those fathers who compelled, who coerced their daughters into getting married, often unwillingly. Now, during this time, the revolutionary government also made marriage a contract, and this was a contract that women could enter freely and also come out of freely on their volition. So this means that divorce was now legalized. Now by legalizing divorce, women were given the power to come out of marriages in which they felt they were stuck, they were oppressed. Because many marriages happened beyond their will, or many marriages happened even if they did not will the same. And in many such marriages, women were oppressed and tortured, and the legalization of divorce gave women the power to walk out of such marriages. Now, women could also train for jobs. They could become artists and even run small businesses. So from being restricted to the domestic space, women were now given the power to train for jobs. They could now join different jobs. They could also become artists and writers, and they could now have their own small businesses. Now the reign of terror was oppressive in all possible way, because it was during the reign of terror that many women's clubs were shut down. Because during the reign of terror, the Jacobins feared that if the women's clubs kept on functioning, women would be able to assemble and voice their opinions. And if women got to do so, they would be invariably questioning the activities of the Jacobin government. So out of a fear of women and their power, these women's clubs were shut down. And at the same time, many prominent women who were members of these clubs were arrested and even executed. So this happened very prevalently during the reign of terror. Now when we talk about the significance of women in the French Revolution, mention must be made of the French playwright and political activist by the name of Olympe de Gouges. Now this woman was a very powerful one. She was very well educated, and when France was embroiled in a series of conflicts and confusion, she was drawn to the French politics. But she was severely frustrated and annoyed when the 1789 historic document came out as the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. It had no mention of the woman, which is to say, women did not qualify as citizens who should be granted different civil liberties. So as a response to this document, Olympe de Gouges in the year 1791 wrote the famous Declaration of the Rights of Woman and of the Female Citizen. So here she advocated for gender equality. Here she posited that women should be treated on equal grounds as men. Here she also posited that women should be properly categorized as French citizens, and they should be a part of the political processes of the state. Now unfortunately, during the reign of terror, Olympe de Gouges was charged with treason, because many prominent women were imprisoned and they were tried, and this woman was also charged with treason. And unfortunately enough, she was guillotined in 1793 when she criticized the severely repressive activities of the Jacobin government. Now before proceeding with this lesson, let me ask you a question. Which female playwright wrote the Declaration of the Rights of Woman and of the Female Citizen? Was it Aphra Behn, Olympe de Gouges, Gertrude Stein, or Martha Morton? Well, the correct answer is Olympe de Gouges. She wrote this document, Declaration of the Rights of Woman and of the Female Citizen, as a response to the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen that was written in 1789. Now, the French Revolution took place in the late 18th century. Following that, through the 19th and the 20th centuries, many suffragette movements were carried out by women in different parts of the world. Now, a suffragette movement is one in which one demands political rights, in which one demands electoral rights. And women in different parts of the world were inspired by these revolutionary women who voiced their opinions during the French Revolution. And following their lead, these women of different parts of the world now organized their own suffragette movements. And finally, it was in the year 1946 that French women won their voting rights. Well, all we can say here is that better late than never. This now brings us to an end of our discussion on women in the French Revolution. We talked about how women had to struggle when men went out to the battlefields to fight different wars. They had to struggle a lot in order to earn a living and at the same time take care of the family, to cook food, to take care of the children. Now, women were forming their own women's clubs in order to voice their opinions, in order to discuss the issues of discrimination and ill treatment that was meted out to them. And then we talked about the French playwright, that was Olympe de Gouges, and how she wrote a very historic document called the Declaration of the Rights of the Woman and of the Female Citizen, that was a response to the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. Now, we also learnt about how during the Reign of Terror, women's clubs were shut down and women were severely repressed and even executed during this period. But these women were not to be chained down any longer. And these revolutionary women continued to inspire many suffragette movements throughout different parts of the world in the 19th and the 20th centuries. And then we discussed that French women won their voting rights finally in 1946. In our subsequent lesson, we will be taking up another angle to discuss the French Revolution. We will talk about how the French Revolution had its impact felt on the issue of slavery as well. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it's rewarding too. So register for free now.